Family is supposed to protect you, not rob you blind. But I learned that lesson far too late. My phone buzzed just as I stepped out of the office. The late sun painted the city in gold, but the moment I saw the bank's name, that soft light turned cold. My heart thudded louder than the traffic around me. Double quotes high. "This is Angela from Eastvale Trust Bank." The voice said, too cheerful for what came next. "We're calling to confirm authorization on a $72,000 withdrawal from your inheritance trust account." I nearly dropped the phone. "What?" "I didn't authorize anything," I snapped, pulling into the nearest bench, fingers shaking. The woman paused. "So you're saying this wasn't you?" "No, it wasn't me." My voice broke slightly. I hated how weak I sounded. "That account is locked until I'm 25. There was another pause, then a softer tone. "Well, the funds were accessed through a guardian authorization your mother, it seems." I didn't even hear the rest. Just the world collapsing. Around me, that money, my dad's final gift to me, was gone. I drove home with trembling hands, thoughts swirling like a storm. My father died 2 years ago in a car accident. He wasn't rich, but he was careful. He made sure to set something aside for me, something to help me start life on my own terms. I was 21 then, too young to access it, but I knew it was there, safe, waiting until now. When I walked into the house that evening, my mom was lounging in her usual spot on the cream velvet sofa, glass of wine in hand, the kind of casual comfort that suddenly looked suspicious. She looked up with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early. I got a call from the bank," I said, dropping my keys on the side table harder than I meant to. Her smile faltered for just a second. "Oh, they said there was a $70,000 withdrawal from my account, the one Dad left for me." She sipped her wine and set the glass down, slow and measured. "Yes, I had to use some of it for your sister." I blinked. "What? She's getting married in 3 months? Do you know how expensive a wedding in Dubai is? And we've already put a deposit on the venue. It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing." I stared at her, stunned. "You stole from me for a party?" Her tone sharpened. "It's not stealing if it's for the family. Besides, you weren't using. It's not like you have a house or a husband yet." Felt something break in me. String pulled too tight for too long. That money wasn't for you to decide on. It was mine. It was all I had from Dad. She waved her hand, annoyed. "Oh, don't be so dramatic. You'll make it back. You're smart. Don't act like a victim." At dinner that night, my sister Lauren announced her wedding details like a princess reading off a royal decree. "It'll be at the Atlantis in Dubai," she beamed. Ocean View Ballroom. 12 bridesmaids. We're flying everyone out business class. Everyone clapped except me. I sat there in silence, feeling like I didn't belong in my own home. My aunt gushed about the custom Vera Wang gown. My cousin joked about how I'd better borrow something nice for the occasion. No one asked how I was doing, or what I thought they couldn't know what had been stolen to make this dream happen. That the glitter and gold they were cheering for came from my future. My mother gave me a tight smile across the table, her eyes daring me to ruin the moment. So I didn't. I smiled back, and in that moment, I made a decision. I wouldn't scream, I wouldn't beg, I wouldn't fight her now. No. I would let her believe she won, because when I walked back into this family again, it wouldn't be as the broken girl they robbed. It would be as the woman they never saw coming. I couldn't sleep that night. The ceiling above me blurred through unshed tears. The faint sound of my sister's laughter echoing from the hallway as she scrolled through wedding plans with Mom. They sounded happy, blissful. Meanwhile, I lay in bed. Hollow. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's smile. His calloused hands holding mine the day he signed that trust document. "This is for your future, sweetheart. Something no one can take from you." But he was wrong. She took it, and now all I had left was rage. The next morning, I skipped breakfast. I didn't want to sit across from Mom and pretend everything was okay. I didn't want to hear Lauren complain about the floral arrangements or how the flight attendants better serve champagne chilled. Instead, I went to the only person who might help, my father's old friend and lawyer, Mr. Redford. He hadn't changed much still in his gray suspenders and glasses that always slipped down his nose. "What brings you in, kiddo?" he asked, pouring me a mug of strong black coffee like he used to when Dad brought me along as a child. I told him everything, every detail. My voice trembled when I reached the part about the withdrawal. He listened in silence. Then he pulled out a thick brown file from his drawer. "I thought something like this might happen someday," he murmured. "Your father, he had a feeling." My eyebrows furrowed. "What do you mean?" "He trusted your mom to an extent, but he wasn't blind to her ways. He asked me to put a clause in the trust. One that activates if the funds are ever accessed prematurely without your written consent." My breath hitched. "There's a backup plan." He smiled, tapping the file. "Not just a plan, a trigger. If she broke the terms, legal consequences follow." I felt a flicker of hope for the first time. "Can we file it?" He nodded. "It'll take a week or two to process, but yes, we can. You'll get your inheritance back, Cor. She'll be legally forced to compensate the loss plus damages." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Redford." But he wasn't done. "One more thing," he said, handing me a sealed envelope with my name in Dad's handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a letter. "If you're reading this, baby girl, it means someone tried to mess with what I left for you. I always hoped I was wrong about your mother's greed. But if I wasn't, then listen carefully. Don't fight them the way they fought you. Outgrow them, outshine them, and when the time is right, outclass them." I walked out of that office not as a girl who had been robbed, but as a woman on a mission. For the next few days, I didn't speak a word to my family. I smiled at the breakfast table, nodded politely at Lauren's wedding rants, even complimented her dress choices inside. I was building something. I pulled out my laptop at night and started applying to jobs in the city. Marketing firms, fashion houses, event management agencies, Sunnywear. I could use my design degree. I didn't want to rely on their money anymore. If they thought I'd be the quiet little girl forever, they were wrong. Midway through the week, my mother approached me in the kitchen. "Are you really not going to help with the wedding?" she asked, casually sipping her green smoothie. "I'll be there," I replied with a smile. "Front row even." She looked at me suspiciously. "You're taking this awfully well." I shrugged. "It's just money, right? Family is more important." She smiled, satisfied, and turned away. If only she knew what was coming. If you're loving this emotional journey and believe justice always finds a way, hit that subscribe button. We're only just getting started. 3 weeks later, the wedding week finally arrived. My mom had no clue a legal notice was waiting for her at the venue's front desk, or that Mr. Redford had frozen what was left of the trust funds just in time, or that I had quietly moved into a cozy apartment uptown my new employer, helping with the down payment my first day at work. My boss said something I'll never forget. "People who've been betrayed make the fiercest creatives. They know what it's like to build from ashes." I smiled, because that's exactly what I was doing. The night before Lauren's wedding, we had a family dinner. Candles lit, fancy dishes. Her mother gave a toast, practically glowing in her glittery gown. "To family," she said, lifting her glass, "and 2 sacrifices we make for each other." I raised my glass too, but my smile was sharper this time too. "Payback," I whispered under my breath. The day of the wedding arrived in all its synthetic glory. White roses, gold chandeliers, sparkling champagne, string quartet playing soft classical notes as if nothing rotten ever festered beneath pretty things. I stood in the back of the venue, dressed in a long emerald gown. Not the bridesmaid dress my mother tried to force me into. No, I refused to be a prop in their fairy tale. I didn't even sit with the family. I had my own seat, reserved, alone. But powerful, because today wasn't just Lauren's wedding, it was the day I took my voice back. Ceremony began. She walked down the aisle with our mother on one side and Smugness on the other. Every step she took in her designer gown was like a stab, a reminder of what she'd stolen. Not just money, legacy, honor, Dad's promise. I felt the paper in my clutch bag. The legal notice. Mr. Redford had drafted it perfectly, not to ruin the wedding. That would be easy. No, I wanted silence to speak louder, regret to echo longer. The officiant asked, "Does anyone have any objections before we continue?" Everyone held their breath. I stood, gasps, turning heads. A pause in the music. My mother's smile shattered into a tight-lipped panic. "I don't object," I said, stepping forward. "I just have something to say." Lauren's eyes widened. "This isn't the time, sis." "Oh, I think it is." I walked to the front, heels echoing like drum beats. My voice calm, clear. No anger, just truth. "First of all, congratulations," I said, nodding to her and her clueless groom. "It takes real talent to rob your own blood and smile through it." The groom blinked. "What is she talking about?" "She used my inheritance to pay for this circus," I said, turning to the audience. "Money my father left specifically. For me, money they claimed was lost." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. My mother tried to interject. This isn't the place." "No, Mom, it's exactly the place. You wanted the spotlight." "I'm just turning it." And I pulled the envelope from my bag and handed it to a staff member. "Please give this to the bride and her mother. It's a legal notice. The trust fund is frozen. Charges have been filed." Gasps, audible now. The groom took the papers, confused, his face pale. "You lied to me," he whispered to Lauren. "This whole wedding's funded by—" "Was a loan," she stammered, "from a dead man." I shot back. My mother stormed toward me, her voice low and venomous. "You've ruined your sister's wedding." "No," I said, finally meeting her eyes. "You ruined this family." I just turned on the lights. That was the moment I walked out. Not angrily, not in tears, just done. Outside, the sky was calm. Birds chirped as if nothing had just exploded behind me. But something had. Something. Necessary. I didn't need applause. Just the silence that followed truth. The next morning, Lauren's wedding photos were nowhere online. No stories, no happy hashtags. It's just gossip and group chats. I received a text from my cousin, Emily. "You were a queen yesterday. The way you didn't yell, just burned him with the truth." But the real surprise came later. Mr. Redford called. "You might want to check your email." I opened it to find something that made my hands tremble. An amendment to the trust. One Dad had filed secretly months before his passing. It stated that if the trust was breached and the responsible parties faced legal action, an emergency clause would release the remaining assets directly to me if I proved independent, working and no longer under family care. I had just signed a lease. Started work, I qualified. Within days, the money was back where it belonged. But something more valuable happened. For the first time in years. I looked in the mirror and didn't see the quiet one, the passive one. The left-behind daughter. I saw a woman who stood alone and stood tall. My mom tried to call. I didn't answer. Lauren messaged an apology that began with, "I didn't mean to, ... and ended with ... but it was already done." I deleted it. At my new job, my boss gave me a design project for a client's upcoming gala. Theme, Phoenix's Rise. "Use something personal," she said. "Something real." I designed an art piece, a silhouette of a woman walking through flames not burned, but reborn. Underneath it, the caption read, "They buried me, not knowing I was a seed." If this story hit you right in the heart and you believe in taking your power back, don't forget to subscribe. We tell stories that aren't just sad, they're transformational. After the wedding wreckage, life moved quickly, but not how they expected. Lauren's dream honeymoon to Santorini. Canceled. The groom's family backed out after the legal embarrassment. I heard through a cousin. That he moved out the very next day. You dragged us into a scandal, he told her. According to whispers, she tried to fix it. She posted vague apologies online, turned off comments, and even reached out to me again, this time begging for a private meeting. I declined. Meanwhile, Mom had her own meltdown. She'd spent years carefully curating her image community events, charity dinners, the polished PTA reputation. Now, local forums whispered about the woman who stole from her dead husband's daughter. Subtle yet brutal. She tried damage control. I didn't know the money was legally restricted, she told reporters from a family magazine she'd once been featured in. Too late, the article went viral for the wrong reasons. And suddenly, the invitations stopped arriving. Her phone went silent. Even her best friend Brenda unfollowed her on Instagram. Subscribe now if you're still with me, because it only gets better from here. As for me, I moved into my new apartment, cozy with a balcony overlooking the city's skyline. Small but mine. I got promoted 2 weeks into my job. Apparently, standing your ground has a confidence that shows up even in design layouts. My boss said, "You work like someone who survived something. Clients feel it." I smiled. I had survived. But the healing wasn't linear. Some nights I'd stare at old photos. Dad holding me on his shoulders. Lauren and I in matching Halloween costumes. Mom braiding my hair while I read her poetry aloud. And I'd ask myself, when did it all start to rot? Then I'd remind myself, betrayal doesn't always look like daggers. Sometimes it's soft, gradual, 1,000 small cuts you're told to ignore because we're family. I started therapy. My therapist, a kind woman with tired eyes and a coffee obsession, told me something that stuck. You didn't break the family. You broke the cycle. Weeks passed. One evening, after a particularly quiet Sunday, I got a knock on the door. It was Eli. Eli was Dad's old lawyer's assistant. He'd crossed paths once during the trust issue. Back then, he was just the quiet one with files and coffee stains on his shirt. Now, he was standing in front of me, holding a portfolio. "Mr. Redford asked me to drop this off," he said. "What is it?" "A journal your father kept. He wanted you to have it." My chest tightened. Inside were Dad's handwritten notes, letters never sent. One page said, "If you're reading this, it means you finally found your fire. I always knew you would. You were never the weak one, they just feared your strength." Tears came. It's quiet ones, the kind you don't sob, just sit with. Eli didn't leave right away. We talked, then sat, then laughed. It turned into coffee, then another evening, then a gallery opening he invited me to. Then dinners. I didn't fall in love, like lightning. It was more like music in the background you don't notice until you realize it's your favorite song. He never tried to fix me. He just sat in the quiet without flinching, and that's what I needed most. Back on Lauren's side of town, bankruptcy filings, public records. She was being sued by vendors from the wedding, and her influencer deals dried up faster than spilled wine on linen. I never smiled at her downfall, but I didn't feel guilty either. You can't mourn someone who never truly showed up for you. Mom tried again. This time she showed up at my workplace. Security called me. "Ma'am, your mother's here. Says it's urgent." I walked out. She stood there looking small in her heels. I want to fix things," she said. "Did you return the money?" She hesitated. "Not all of it yet. I'm trying." "You didn't come to fix things," I said. "You came to fix your image." Then I walked back inside and didn't look. Back later that night, Eli brought takeout and played old jazz records on my speaker. I leaned into him and whispered something I hadn't said in years. "I feel safe." He didn't answer with words. He just kissed the top of my head and kept the music playing. Life didn't become perfect, but it became mine, and that was enough. If you've ever felt betrayed by the ones you called family or had to rebuild from the ashes they left, subscribe to this channel. You're not alone, and your story isn't over. It started with a voicemail. "Hi, This is Dr. Klein from St. Gabriel's Hospital. We have a patient here. Ms. Marianne Holloway. She listed you as her emergency contact. I nearly dropped my phone. Emergency contact. She hadn't spoken to me in months, unless you count her public half-apology interviews or that ambush at my office. I played the message again. It was real. I drove in silence. The hospital looked gray, colder then. I remembered from when Dad had passed. I hadn't walked those halls since I was 17, clutching my mother's hand as they pulled the plug on the only man who ever made me feel enough. Now, I was walking in alone. The receptionist gave me a tight-lipped nod and gestured toward the ICU room 407. Mom looked small, hooked to wires. Oxygen hissing gently. Her hair, usually in its polished chignon, frayed and thin against the pillow. The monitors beeped softly, like a ticking clock reminding me how fragile time was. I didn't cry. Not yet. A nurse entered quietly. She collapsed at a grocery store. Stroke, followed by cardiac distress. We've stabilized her, but has a rare blood disorder. It's genetic. The stroke was triggered by internal complications. We've been trying to reach her family. I stared blankly. She never told me. She probably didn't know. It's usually undetected until too late. I sat in that chair beside her bed for an hour, maybe 3. I hated her, but seeing her like that, it didn't feel victorious. It felt like watching a villain crumble after you'd already stopped caring. About the fight, midway through that night, she woke up, just slightly, her eyes fluttering. She saw me. She didn't smile, didn't cry. She whispered, "You came." I nodded. "I didn't think you would," she rasped. "You're still my mother." A tear escaped her. "Real this time? I failed you." "Not yet." If this story is gripping your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe. The truth is still unfolding. She talked again 2 days later. After regaining strength, the first thing she said wasn't "thank you" or "I'm sorry." It was, "Do I still have time?" Time to what? To heal. To make things right. To manipulate. I didn't ask, but I did listen. She told me things I didn't expect to hear, like how Lauren wasn't always her favorite, just the easier one. She agreed with everything I said. "You ask questions?" She admitted she spent Dad's money, not out of greed, but panic. I was scared. I didn't know how to survive without him. "And you reminded me of him too much." I swallowed hard, so she punished me for being like the man she lost. Then she dropped the bomb. "I have a half-brother. I blinked you." She nodded weakly. "Born before I met your father. My parents gave him up. I was young, scared. I never told anyone. But this disorder, it's hereditary. He might have it. You want me to find him?" She shook her head. "No. I just wanted you to know. That secret's run in our bloodline." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. When I left that night, Eli was waiting outside in his car. "You okay?" He asked. "No." I said honestly, "But I'm learning to sit with that." He squeezed my hand. "You don't have to carry her shame." "I'm not. I'm just learning how to carry the truth." The next morning, I got a call from the hospital's legal team. They needed to confirm next of kin. Mom had made no recent changes to her will. Apparently, everything was still in my name, including the house and every dollar she hadn't yet spent. I visited it once. The house that raised me, that tried to break me. Dust hung in the air like ghosts. Lauren's room was empty. Mine still had the faded sticker on the closet door. Dream big. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just released. Back in the hospital, I stood by her side for what I knew might be the last time. "You're not the woman I wanted," I told her softly. "But maybe you became the mirror I needed." She didn't respond. She couldn't. The machines beeped slower now, and then flatline. I didn't cry in that moment. But when I got home, I opened my dad's journal again and read this line. "Some people break you to see what you're made of. Others break you because they see what you're becoming." And that's when I let the tears come. Mom's funeral was quiet. Not because no one showed up, but because no one knew what to say. Lauren didn't attend. She sent a floral arrangement that probably cost more than our first car and a card that read, "In remembrance." Typical. I stood beside her casket with Eli and the chaplain. The sky above was heavy and gray, like it had paused just long enough to witness this moment. I didn't feel relief or sadness, just ... emptiness. I'd come full circle. The child who was once too loud, too curious, too ungrateful was now the only one standing at her mother's farewell. The irony didn't feel poetic. It felt cruel as the priest read Psalm 23. I glanced around at the guests' old neighbors, distant cousins. Former coworkers who hadn't seen her since the retirement party she threw. For herself, they whispered. One lady asked the person next. To her, isn't that the daughter she disowned? I smiled bitterly. At least the rumor mill still worked. Then, just as the coffin was being lowered, a man in a dark suit appeared at the edge of the graveyard, tall. Broad-shouldered salt and pepper beard. He wasn't crying, wasn't even pretending to, but his eyes locked on mine with something haunting. Familiar, like looking into a mirror 20 years from now. The man stepped forward and handed me a letter. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said. I opened my mouth, but before I could ask who he was, he nodded respectfully and walked away. I didn't open the letter until that night. Eli sat beside me as I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. The handwriting wasn't Mom's, but it was dated 6 months ago. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I never had the courage to tell you the whole truth. You deserved it, but I couldn't face it myself. The man you just met, his name is Thomas. He's your uncle, my brother. Yes, I lied to you your whole life. I didn't grow up an only child. I had someone, but when I got pregnant at 17 and gave my first baby up, my parents forced Thomas to cut ties with me to protect our reputation. I never forgave them, and I took that out on you. Because you reminded me of that girl I used to be, the one who had dreams and a heart that wouldn't settle. I wish I could have told you sooner, but I knew. I wasn't brave like you. Take care of him. He's your family. The room went quiet. Eli's eyes met mine. Are you okay? I didn't know what to say, so I just whispered, I think I have a brother. If this chapter stunned you, make sure to subscribe the next morning. I called Thomas. He answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, he said gently. I have questions. I figured, meet me for coffee. At the small cafe downtown, he sat with a worn leather notebook. Like Dad's journal, but older, more weathered. This was hers, he said, sliding it over. She wrote in it when she left home. About you, about us. I flipped through it. Page after page of a teenager's regrets, sketches of cribs and dresses. Torn out photos of babies that might have looked like me. She tried to find her first child for years, Thomas said. That was her biggest shame. My throat tightened. It must have been kept in the law offices, safe held for the right moment. The final moment, I sat at the window, hands trembling as I peeled it open. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Folded twice. Her words met me like a whisper from the past. My Ava, if you are reading this, then I'm gone. I wish I could have found the courage to say all of this when I was alive. But courage was never my strong suit, not when it mattered most. There are things I regret more than I can put into words. Giving up your sister was one of them. Letting my shame dictate your childhood was another. I see now how I punished you. For choices that weren't yours? I was scared, bitter, and I buried love beneath expectations, when I should have let it bloom on its own. You were never a disappointment, Ava. You were my only light, and I dimmed it. I stopped reading. The paper blurred as tears flooded my vision. Thomas came into the room, saw my face, and didn't say a word. Just sat quietly across from me, letting me feel every second of it. I wiped my face and read on. I hope someday you read this with peace in your heart. Maybe you found Claire. Maybe not. Maybe you hate me. I wouldn't blame you, but I hope, more than anything, think you've lived fully, loudly, messily, the way I never allowed myself to. And if you ever have a daughter, please don't pass on my fear. Tell her she can be everything. Tell her she already is. Love, Mom. I folded the letter gently, held it to my chest, and let myself grieve again, not for the mother I lost, but for the version of her I never got. To know? Before we go further, if this moment touched you, hit subscribe. These are the stories that stay with us, and the ending. It's not what you expect. Later that week, I invited Claire over for dinner. I handed her the letter without saying anything. She read it in silence, same as I had. I never got to meet her, she said, but I think I get her now. We sat in silence, the kind that feels warm, not awkward. You think she's proud of us? Claire asked. I looked around at the cozy kitchen, the kids laughing in the other room, the smell of something sweet baking in the oven. I think she finally is, I whispered. Eli came home from work that night and found us all dancing in the living room. No music, just laughter. Barefoot on wooden floors, pretending we were 10 again. He didn't ask questions, just joined in. Thomas lifted Claire's daughter in the air, and she squealed with joy, and for the first time in a long, long while, the house felt full, not with ghosts, but with grace. Weeks passed. Then months. The bookstore did well better than I dreamed. People came not just for the books or the coffee, but for the stories, and slowly started writing mine, not out of revenge, but to remember. One afternoon, a young girl came into the shop. She was maybe 16, with tired eyes and a silence that felt familiar. She picked up a journal and flipped through the pages. Writing helps, I told her. She looked up, surprised. Yeah, I nodded. It saved me. She smiled faintly, bought the journal, and walked out with a tiny spark in her step. It reminded me why I chose this path, why I stopped chasing closure and started creating it. Mid-chapter pause. Hit subscribe, because healing isn't linear. On the last lines may just leave you breathless. One Sunday morning, I visited Mom's grave alone. The cemetery was quiet. The sky a soft, bruised blue. I brought a cup of tea and the same kind of wildflowers Claire had once brought. I sat on the grass and read her the last pages of my new book. Chapter 30, The Day I Forgave You. My voice cracked halfway through, but I didn't stop. Forgiveness isn't a thunderclap. It's a whisper that says, you hurt me, but I won't carry it anymore. And that day, let it all go. As I stood to leave, I said one last thing. I hope wherever you are, you're dancing, and not alone. And just as I turned away, a gust of wind swirled the petals across the stone. I smiled. Maybe it was just weather, or maybe it was her saying thank you. On the inside flap of my journal, I wrote one last note. They said I'd never be more than what she left behind. So I built something no one could take away. And I did. Not just for me, but for every girl who ever had to prove she was worth loving. If you loved this story, subscribe, share it, and never miss another emotional journey that breaks and heals your heart in all the right places.